أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The evils of their works will become obvious to them, and the very things they mocked will come back to haunt them. It will be proclaimed, "Today we forget you, just as you forgot the meeting of this day. Your abode is the hellfire, and you will have no helpers." 35. This is because you mocked and ridiculed God's revelations and were preoccupied with the first life. Consequently, they will never exit therefrom, nor will they be excused. To God belongs all praise, Lord of the heavens, Lord of the earth, Lord of the universe. To Him belongs all supremacy in the heavens and the earth. He is the Almighty, most wise. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, Hamim. The revelation of this scripture is from God, the Almighty, the Wise. We did not create the heavens and the earth and everything between them except for a specific purpose and for a finite interim. Those who disbelieved are totally oblivious to the warnings. Say, consider the idols you set up besides God. Show me, what on earth did they create? Do they own part of the heavens? Show me any other scripture or any piece of knowledge that supports your idolatry, if you are truthful. The idols totally unaware. Who is further astray than those who idolize besides God, idols that can never respond to them until the day of resurrection, and are totally unaware of their worship? This is what most Sunnis and Shias do. The next page, the idols disown their worshippers. And when the people are summoned on the day of judgment, their idols will become their enemies and will denounce their idolatry. When our revelations were recited to them clearly, those who disbelieved said of the truth that came to them, "This is obviously magic." So we're talking about idol worshippers who idolize people, because we're told in verse 6, when the people are summoned on the day of judgment, their idols will become their enemies and will denounce their idolatry. So Ali will have to denounce all the Shias, and Muhammad denounces all the Muslims. In fact, this is documented in the Quran.
Verse 5 also. Verse 5.
Yes.
That they never respond to them until the day of resurrection.
Exactly.
Others will be resurrected.
Yeah, Muhammad and Ali and Hussein cannot respond to anybody until the day.
Until the day of resurrection. Then they disown
Then they disown them. Right. We never knew about you. Now, these people, these particular people, who, when our revelations were recited to them clearly, that is, worship God alone, uphold the word of God alone, the creed is La ilaha illallah, those who disbelieved say to the truth that comes to them, "This is obviously magic." When they say, "He fabricated this," say, "If I fabricated this, then you cannot protect me from God. He is fully aware of everything you scheme. He suffices as a witness between me and you. He is the forgiver, most merciful." When I apply this to me personally, I notice always when it says "say," it is already said. I always tell them, if I'm a liar, then this is my problem. What am I telling you? I'm telling you worship God alone and uphold the word of God alone. So if I'm lying to you, this is my problem. But as far as you're concerned, you can benefit from the truth if it is truthful, and you can benefit from the message. If I'm a liar, it's my problem, not yours. Say, I am not different from other messengers. I have no idea what will happen to me or to you. I only follow what is revealed to me. I am no more than a profound warner. Say, what if it is from God and you disbelieved in it? A witness from the children of Israel has borne witness to a similar phenomenon. So, look at the footnote here. 4610. This witness is Rabbi Judah the Pious, 11th century AD, who discovered the same 19-based mathematical code and intact fragments of the scriptures. See Appendix 1. So obviously, number 9, say here, refers to our generation. I'm not different from other messengers. I have no idea what will happen to me or to you. I only follow what is revealed to me. I'm no more than a profound warner. Say, what if it is from God and you disbelieved in it? A witness from the children of Israel has borne witness to a similar phenomenon, and he has believed while you have turned arrogant. surely God does not guide the wicked people. Rabbi Judah the Pious is undoubtedly a believer when you read his writings. God alone. In fact, he's a strict scripturist, just like we are. Number 11. Those who disbelieved said about those who believed, if it were anything good, they would not have preceded us to it. Because they were not guided thereby, they said, this is an old fabrication. Number 12. Before this, the book of Moses provided guidance and mercy, and this is a confirming Arabic scripture to warn those who transgress and to give good news to the righteous. Good news. Surely those who said, our Lord is God, then led a righteous life, will have no fear, nor will they grieve. Sounds familiar? Number 14. They have deserved paradise, where they abide forever, a reward for their works. Congratulations. Any questions?
Surah, those who Christian not here, but when they no fear, no grieve, I remember that. The question was the Quran says in the verse, those who are Jewish or Christians, no fear. Okay, how about the people who do not believe you, your messenger?
They don't go ahead.
Okay, they say, well, how about this? And
Same.
I told them something I'm going to make sure. I said, this is for people who didn't
don't
reach
know.
the
Yeah.
proof. If you
If
show...
these people, if they come and see the proof, that
yes.
I give them the proof,
Yes.
I give them
And
the
they,
message,
They go.
and they say and they don't believe, they are going to
Yeah,
hell.
yeah.
If there are believers who are included here, they will readily accept everything.
I said, for example, if now is the time of after Moses, and everybody, they don't know or they die, or they all is heaven. But if Jesus showed them the proof,
Yes.
and they still say, no, we don't believe, they
Go
are
to
not.
heaven.
Yeah, they go.
Yeah, this is for people who don't know.
Yeah.
They're in the middle of the jungle, they didn't know anything about Quran or anything else. But anytime you show them the Quran, they'll believe it. You find nothing objectionable in it. You show them any proof from God, they accept it. See, God will guide them, make them
Yeah.
believe.
And after this, alhamdulillah, they say, yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah.
Would it be appropriate if somebody, regarding verse 10, a witness from the children of Israel has borne witness to a similar phenomenon? If people say, well, it also means that this verse also, a part of the verse also refers to Jesus, I could say, yes, it used to refer to Jesus vis-a-vis Muhammad, but now it refers to
no,
the
actually-
bias vis-a-vis Rashad.
No, it never refers to Jesus. No, Jesus is not considered as one of the children of Israel in the Quran. He's considered the vanguard of a new movement and a whole new religion.
The Quran says that.
Yes. So شهد من بني Israel. If it was Jesus, God would have said, Jesus bore witness. We wouldn't call Jesus one of the children of Israel.
There has no, I mean, there are two possibilities. One is that verse had a particular relevance at the time of Muhammad and has a further deeper relevance at your time,
No.
but not this one.
It's just one of the things that were to come later, to become obvious later. A witness from among the children of Israel bore witness to something like it. But Jesus didn't bear witness to something like the Quran. It's totally different. Yeah, this is there's no question that it is Rabbi Judah the Pious.
He has believed.
And right.
He has believed.
Okay, get going.
In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. This was an excellent brief presentation of the perpetual miracles that God sent to us, that is to be witnessed by anybody, in any place, at any time. Anybody in Tokyo, Japan can open this and witness the miracle. This mathematically coded book. This is the original idea. And I have to take you back a few years, a few centuries actually, where the realization came first that God spoke to us in mathematics. It was about 900 years ago when a Jewish rabbi discovered this number 19 in the intact remnants of the scriptures, specifically in the prayer that was given to them through Abraham, from the tongue of Abraham, just like our namaz came through Abraham. What happened about 900 years ago was that the Jews in France added a short statement to their morning prayer, which was, "Blessed are those who follow the righteous path." They just added this harmless, seemingly harmless statement. Rabbi Judah the Pious, who was living at that time, just wrote a barrage of literature, 8 huge volumes, as to why this short statement will destroy the what he called divine rhythm, or the key that causes contact between us and God. And he showed that the number 19 is the basis of the scriptures, and the language of God is speaking to us, that it is the key to the Word of God. And I have it reproduced here in the appendix. Actually, Rabbi Judah the Pious, I think some of you know this, is actually mentioned in the Quran, in Surah 46, verse 10. So I reproduced part of his writing about him on page 636 of this book. Now, I'm quoting from a book entitled Studies in Jewish Mysticism. It says, "The people, Jews in France, made it a custom to add in the morning prayer the words Ashrei Tenenei Torah, which means blessed are those who walk the righteous way. And our Rabbi the Pious, of blessed memory, wrote that they were completely and utterly wrong. It is all gross falsehood, because there are only 19 times, now notice the number 19, there are only 19 times that the holy name is mentioned in that portion of the morning prayer. And similarly, you find the word Elohim, which means God, 19 times in the pericope of Al Shemot. Similarly, you find that Israel were called sons 19 times, and there are many other examples. Now listen to this. All these sets of 19 are intricately intertwined, and they contain many secrets and esoteric meanings which are contained in more than 8 large volumes. Furthermore, in this section there are 152 words. That's 19 times 8. 4610. Is it 4610 or 4210? Let me see. Maybe 4210. It was not 4610. Yes. 4610 I say, what if it is from God, this Quran? What if it is from God and you disbelieved in it? A witness from the children of Israel has borne witness to a similar phenomenon. And I believe that this verse refers to Rabbi Judah the Pious, because if you read his writing, he's really a believer. So, what I'm trying to say is that the number 19 has been always the key. Has always been the key in God's writings. And one of the strange statements of Galileo was that mathematics is the language with which God created the universe. That was a statement by Galileo. And we come to realize now that in nature, the number 19 also, which may be God's signature, is evident in God's creation. The sun, the moon, and the earth line up in the same position every 19 years. And you can see this in detail again if you go to the library and look at the Jewish calendar. In the Jewish Encyclopedia, under calendar, you'll see this, because they have to adjust the calendar once every 19 years. The human body has 209 bones, which is 19 times 11. The human fetus, it is now established that a full-term embryo is in the mother's womb 266 days, 19 times 14. And this is not 267. And you see this in the textbooks in medical schools. So, obviously, God puts His stamp on everything, including the Quran. The Quran is the only scripture that is intact. And this is where we have the system intact. As Behruz shared with you some of these phenomena, You said over there, you can see. Yeah. Just these numbers here would convince anybody that this is not a human-made book. This top number, I'm going to repeat because the Hebrews went through it a little bit too fast. This number here is the number of digits. If you write every verse in the Quran, the number of every verse. For example, the first surah is 7 verses. So you write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The next surah is 286 verses. So you write next to that 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 286, and so on, all the way to the end of the Quran. So we'll talk about the physical structure of this book. Every verse in the Quran, you just write the number. You end up with a long number, which we have hanging in the wall at Masjid Tucson, and the number of digits is 12,692. This number is a multiple of 19. This is the number of digits in the long number, which takes about 3 pages printed by the computer. And the long number itself is also a multiple of 19. So this confirms the physical structure of the book. How many surahs and how many verses in every surah. This number here is the number of verses in the Quran. You just look at this book and take the first surah 7 verses, second surah 286 verses, third surah 200 verses. You add these numbers to come up with this total, 6346, which is also a multiple of 19. The number of surahs, of course, is 114, which is 19 times 6. The first verse, which is very famous, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, is 19 letters. Okay, 2698, this is the number of the word God in the Quran. The word Allah, from the beginning to the end. 2698. A multiple of 19. And considering how the Quran was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, separated in time and place, it is really incredible. In fact, when we were working on this book, we had about 6 college graduates, including 1 PhD, and we had so much difficulty just keeping track of the word God. We made so many mistakes in doing this. And the book, of course, confirms itself, because if you notice, if you open this book, any of you who has it, you'll see in English, on any page, you'll see in English that the word God is written in capital bold letters. So anyone can easily verify this. And the number of these, the word God is down written on every page. So you can look at any page and confirm that it is 6 times. This page here, page 97, has 6 words Allah in it. And you can do this randomly on any page and make sure that this count is correct. And you go to the end of the book and you see that the word God is a multiple of 19, 2698. 19 times 142. This number here is the sum of all the numbers mentioned in the Quran, without repetition. There are 30 numbers mentioned in the Quran. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 19, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 99, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, no, not 700, 500, 3,000, 5,000, 50,000, and 100,000. And you add them up, you get this total, 162, 146, which is a multiple of 19. Now you notice these are physical facts. Nobody's saying, in my opinion, the total of the numbers in the Quran is 162, 140. It's a physical fact. Yes, sir.
Is Quran has only one version, or has there been different versions of Quran?
No, there's only one version.
One version. There hasn't been any contest as to the different, no denomination.
No,
is
there's
in
only one Quran. There's one Quran.
Just like in Christianity, that the
different versions of the Bible.
Bible has different versions. That is
the King James version, and there is
That's right.
Martin Luther version, and so on. But the Quran is only one version. There are no differences. So this is a physical fact. It is nobody's opinion, and it's all you need to do is find numbers in the Quran and add them up. If they don't add up to a multiple of 19, then the whole thing collapses and the subject is over. But this has been in existence for 20 years now, and it's been scrutinized. This research has been scrutinized more than any research in the history of humanity. Because back home they looked at all these numbers trying to find any errors, and it's been confirmed and reconfirmed that these are physical facts. This number here is the total of the verses wherever the word God is mentioned, the word Allah is mentioned. And this is really and truly awesome. Because, again, if you have a copy of this, just open it at random anywhere and see the word God. Okay, open the page 259. So, open page 259 if you have this, and I can tell you what's in it. In page 259, you see verses 25 to 33 in Surah 14. And you notice that the word God, Allah, is mentioned in verse 25. Verse 27 has 3 of them. Verse 26 has 0. Verse 28 has 1. 29 has 0. 30 has 1 word, Allah. 31 has 0. And 32 has 1. And 33 has 0. So in this, there are 3 words Allah in verse 27, but we only add 27. Verse 20. So we add 25 plus 27 plus 28 plus 30 plus 32. We add only the verses wherever the word Allah is mentioned, whether it is 1 time or 10 times. And this is the total in the whole Quran. It is 118123, which is also multiple 19. So all these phenomena defy coincidence or defy human manufacture. And you immediately realize that we have in our hand God's message to you. You have full confidence. So this is the age of computers. People have been demanding tangible evidence. Now we have tangible evidence that this is God speaking to us and not any human being trying to fool us. Okay, now that the book is proven by physical evidence, we have confidence that this is God speaking to us. It is not any human being with the shortcomings of human beings. And in the book we have answers to these questions. And we know that God is speaking to us. God is telling us. He created us, and He's telling us where we came from. He's telling us why we are here on this earth, and He's telling us where we go from here. And like the Quran says, it says, none can tell you this like the expert. One of the names of God, Khabir. In Arabic, none can tell you these facts like the expert. God is the supreme expert. So now I will try to share with you what God tells us about these questions. Where did we come from? Do you have some markers? I can mark the... Oh yes, thank you. Okay, why are we searching for these questions? Like where did we come from? We learn from Quran that we are here. We have no recollection of our previous past. But we were all in God's kingdom. You can think of us as angels. We used to be angels in God's kingdom. So if I draw a line representing all the creatures in God's kingdom billions of years ago, and this includes you and me, billions of years ago, we existed. It's very clear in the Quran that we existed in the past. For example, in Surah 7, verse 143, God says, I gathered all of you, all the descendants of Adam, and I had you bear witness that I alone am your Lord. God tells us that. But we don't have any recollection of this. We don't remember standing before God and saying, we bear witness you are our Lord. So the Quran teaches us we don't have any remembrance of that. And this is one of the purposes of us being here, is to come into an existence where we do not remember the past and have a fresh start. Then we are given 2 messages. One message from God and one message from Satan. And we are supposed to freely make a choice. God gave us the freedom to choose. You can choose either one of them, either God's message or Satan's message. As you know, I'm going to interrupt this what God is telling us in the middle of the subject. In the middle of the subject, Adam and Eve were in heaven, and God gave them a message. This is because all of us I'm sure know this. But God gave Adam and Eve a message. He said, you're in paradise, you can enjoy anything you want, but not this tree. Don't come close to this tree. That was God's message to Adam and Eve. And they stayed in heaven, God knows how long, maybe thousands, maybe millions of years. So, but the point is, for as long as they respected God's commandment, God's law, they stayed there. And then, most of you know, Satan went to them and said, eat from this tree. Okay, so now they have two messages. Hi Rashi, how are you? Adam and Eve were in heaven, or in paradise or heaven, the same thing, and they had a message from God telling them, do not eat from this tree, and they had a message from Satan saying, eat from this tree. For as long as they obeyed, adhered by God's message, they stayed in heaven. Once they listened to Satan, they were kicked out of them. And this is what brought us here. As a second coming to this world. Not the initial, this is not the original sin. The eating from the tree is not the original sin as believed in the previous scriptures. So, this line representing all of God's creatures, including you and me, and these creatures of God had different responsibilities, different assignments of work. And depending on their duties, they had different powers. For example, if somebody assigns to you something to do in New York, your company says you must go to New York and do something and come back. They'll give you a ticket to get on a plane, fly to New York, do the job and come back. This is some power given to you. So, God's creatures have different powers. One of the most powerful creatures, not the most powerful creature, one of the powerful creatures, now we got to know as Satan, his God-given powers went to his head. He had an egotistic problem. He thought he can be a God besides God. He thought he can run a dominion besides God. And this immediately created various degrees of agreement or disagreement with Satan. So let's just to put the matter in perspective, I'm going to put a representation of how many creatures agreed with Satan. The vast majority of God's creatures did not agree with Satan. Only a few. I'm going to represent them by this red dot. I hope you can see it back there. So the vast majority of creatures, they said, no way, Satan cannot be a God besides God. Only God can be a God. This is from a practical point of view. There's simply more to Godhood than Satan thought. And this is reflected in this world now, that Satan cannot run the world. There are many starving children, many diseases, earthquakes, cancer. All this is Satan's incompetence, reflects Satan's incompetence in this world. These creatures that did not agree with Satan are the angels. The creatures became classified. The creatures who upheld God's absolute authority were classified as angels. The creatures that rebelled and agreed with Satan were classified as, and then further classified. Let's now classify them as rebels. They did not believe in God's absolute authority. Now I'm going to take this little dot here. By the way, this little dot represents something like 1 trillion creatures. The number of God's angels is not known to anybody except God. You see this in the Quran, in Surah 74, verse 31, where God says only God knows the number of the angels. Even the angels don't know how many of them there are. As you see, this red dot representing 1 trillion creatures, and the blue line is much larger, so there's countless numbers of angels. I'm going to extend this dot here into a long line. We're still dealing with the question, where did we come from? This line represents about 1 trillion creatures. They are the creatures that agreed with Satan. And this includes you and me in this line. To different degrees. Let's say here are the least agreeable with Satan, and these are the staunch agreeable with Satan. God gave these creatures in second chance. First of all, the angels said, since these creatures here rebelled, put them all in hell, throw them all in hell, banish them from your kingdom. And in Surah 2, verse 30, God says, no. One of the names of God is the most merciful. God wanted to give us another chance to reconsider our decision to side with Satan. In Surah 2 verse 30, God says, I know what you do not know. The angel said, throw them all in hell, and God said, I know what you do not know. What did God know that the angels didn't know? God knew that some of us, deep in our heart, we really believe in God's absolute authority. But for some reason, we were swept in the crowd and we agreed with Satan to different degrees. So, pardon? So, this line here representing the rebels, God gave him a second chance. He said, how would you like to reconsider your agreement with Satan?
Ali, MashaAllah. MashaAllah. She wrote me a fantastic letter. She's early, very early believer. It takes a lot of courage to do that.
But I was feeling in 70.
Yes.
Why should we not have a messenger? I mean, I didn't distinguish between a messenger and a prophet, whatever I said. But I said, this is the time we need someone. When God has all through in the Quran said that He has sent messengers to people who went astray. And there were two at a time, many times. But I said, in this time, and among His most chosen people, the Muslims, which He has sent the last book and the last prophet, and things finalized, and why when these people are going astray, we are going astray, like doing all the wrong things that we are not supposed to do. All the Muslim countries are at war with each other. Why doesn't He help us now? He won't forsake us. I was so sure.
Yes.
I said, He has to send somebody. Why wouldn't He? And they said, how can you? Nobody's going to come up. I said, yes. I don't see why not. Like, I would accept if somebody showed up and said, I'm from God. As long as he's reading the word of God in the Quran, I said, I would.
By the way, she's reading her letter. I went in there to look for her letter, which I know I have it somewhere, but I couldn't find it. What she just said now is exactly her letter. But she added to it that, but to have the messenger come in my lifetime, this is a dream that I never expected.
Immediately I said it, and then I said, oh, I may not be so lucky. And if he really comes, will I have the courage to stand up and say, oh, I accept somebody there? He won't be right in front of me. I never do.
This is the letter, exactly. This is what she wrote. Can you imagine? And this is very early, when nobody else had any courage, because it was very difficult even on me, initially. But so is it an honor or not to know Mrs. Amira Ali? MashaAllah. She's very precious. MashaAllah.
Something else that really banged in my head after like 3 weeks ago. Like in my life, I had people who really pray for, I don't know if they were believers or not, but when you see them, you felt they are. But what we did was we just went to their houses and we disrespected them or stayed with them for half an hour, or maybe just prayed as they were there, or reference them, and we were hoping that they will like help us or give us a praise, writing. And then I compared that with what I have here. I thought like completely different. You see, like over there we went and we saw, like Shepherd's Man did this, he opened all the codes, or he made this person, if he was sick, good, and we just, Shepherd's Man did that, go and get something else from him. Which I think at this time we have lots of people like that. They might be believers, but the way that you see, like we will be preached here is completely different. Like from the time I met the group, I saw that Alhamdulillah, I pray completely, rather than just doing it at those areas.
Yeah, Alhamdulillah, we're very special. So the things that, what is happening now is, first of all, give us a chance to finish the work that needs to be finished. Second is to select these very special people, السابقون السابقون, the elite of the elite. There are people who are joining, and sometimes you think if the opening up happened like last year, look how many people would have been deprived of this position of being elite of the elite. The elite of the elite, or السابقون السابقون, are the people who are in the vanguards of the movement at the time when it is being persecuted, and everyone is calling us stupid and way off and all the crazy and all these names. So these are but the new generations don't deserve half the credit. I always use the example of the Kulani's kids, Farima and Amir. Farima is a believer, mashallah, and she's an adult who made that very crucial decision when I stayed at their house, and then
after a couple of days, the neighborhood kids come and say, "Where is God's messenger? When is he got me?" Because their kids are saying, "Get to sleep in our house." So those kids, they grow up with this belief, so they don't. They have a fantastic credit, but it's not not 1/1,000,000th of the credit that the adults get. So during this period, God is selecting these special people. Alhamdulillah. I'm glad this 33:7 came along. Well, this is enough of a lot for the morning, so congratulations. But we're open to general discussions.
Yes, one more question.
Sure.
How do you explain the people, for example, Victoria said like Sheikh Osman, are you career is there for that?
ازيك كيف حالك is Arabic. What is the connection? ازيك and كيف حالك? See, this is Egyptian, this is Arabic. When you think about, look at this. See? Did you hear? I'm sure he knows what he's saying.
Sometimes I have children, little children, saying something like this, and I call another child, what are you saying?
Translate. Translate. Just when you think about it, it really is a proof of God's existence.
And God designed our brains in a certain way to learn the languages and our hearing and our way we talk it.
As a matter of fact, language is the only thing that distinguishes the human being in the animal kingdom. The closest creatures to us, the chimps, or the orangutans, how come they don't speak? They don't. Yeah.
Was it David that he was talking to animals?
Pardon?
They have, I think, different kind of communication.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I'm talking about the sound.
It's perfect.
Yes. There's the language of the bees. I was talking to Sammy today about the language of the bees.
Yes, by then.
Yes. I only mentioned it because I studied it. I know how to speak bees. Like Chinese, English, Japanese, and bees. The bee scouts will go and come back and tell the workers in the hive to travel 5 miles northeast, 45 degrees. Yes, and they'll go exactly to that location where the food is, where the flowers are. Yes. They started, pardon? No, any day. They don't go by the sun, no. Yeah. Yes, God taught them. But they did this by marking, they putting a colored dots on the scouts and the workers, different colors. And they watch them, and then the scouts will go and they'll come back and they do certain things. And there's the language of the bees. Yeah? Muhammad?
I had an uncle that used to study in some.
God puts the variations in the languages as well as the sign that comes after the creation of the heavens and the earth. This tells us how important it is. And the change in our colors. Number 23 says, among his signs is your sleeping during the night or the day, and your working in pursuit of his bounties. In this, there are sufficient proofs for people who hear. Only yesterday I heard on the radio that sleeping is one thing that's still mysterious to the scientists. They don't know why we need sleep and what happens that refreshes, changes the person who's sleep dead, like myself at about 8:30, into a person who's alert. What is it that happens in sleeping? Why do we sleep? They don't know. I mean, this is the last decade of the 20th century, and the scientists do not know why we sleep, what the mechanism, or what happens. Among his signs is you're sleeping during the night or the day, and you're working in pursuit of his bounties. In this there are proofs for people who hear. 24. Among his signs is that he shows you the lightning as a source of fear as well as hope. And he sends down from the sky water to revive a land that has died. In this there are sufficient proofs for people who understand. Rain is just the sign of God. Can you imagine if we send astronauts in a spaceship and give them a system where the water circulates? The 3 astronauts in a spaceship, and the water evaporates, makes a cloud around the spaceship, goes with the spaceship where it goes, and then rains on them fresh water. Perfect. I mean, how are we going to do this system? God did it on the spaceship Earth. A renewable source of fresh water. We have to think. That's why God uses the word think a lot in the Quran. See at the end of verse 21, these are signs or sufficient proofs for people who think. If there is no rain on earth for 1 year, everybody will die. This will tell you how important it is. If there is no rain for 1 year on earth, everybody will die. So that's among his signs. 25. Among his signs is that the heaven and the earth are standing at his disposal. Finally, he calls you out of the earth, one call, whereupon you immediately rise. After telling us all these signs, do we have any doubt that God will resurrect the dead? No doubt. 26. To him belongs everyone in the heavens and the earth. All are subservient to him. And he is the one who initiates the creation, then repeats it. This is the easiest thing for him. Now repeats it can refer to resurrection, the second hereafter, or it can mean that Rachel is a repetition of Batul. Batul all over again. He is the one who initiates the creation, then repeats it. This is the easiest thing for him. And to him belongs the most sublime similitude in the heavens and the earth. He is the Almighty, most wise. Absurdity of idolatry. He cites for you herein an example from among yourselves. Do you ever elevate your servants or subordinates to the level where they rival you, and to the point that you pay them as much allegiance and respect as is being paid to you? We thus explain the revelations for the people who understand. Since God is the creator of all things, and He is the boss of the universe, will He elevate anybody to the status of a God? I mean, if you don't accept this for yourself, why should you attribute it to God? Therefore, idolatry is absurd. 29. Indeed, the transgressors have followed their own opinions without knowledge. Thus, who can guide those who have been sent astray by God? No one can help them. And verse 30 tells us that monotheism, worshipping God alone, is a natural instinct in all of us. Therefore, you shall devote yourselves to the religion of strict monotheism. Such is the natural instinct placed into the people by God. Such creation of God will never change. This is the perfect religion, but most people do not know. It's a natural instinct. We are born with the knowledge that we must worship God alone. Then God puts in your body a devil to tell you, no, don't do that. You must believe in Hussein, and Ali, and Muhammad, and Jesus, and Mary, and St. Francis.
This is the nature of this place. It is visible by God, such creation of God. It will never change. God, in other words, describes idol worship as they want to change the creation of God.
Right.
And I have trouble with difficulty with understanding of this verse, but from here, the creation of God is created us to believe to.
No, this means that the babies that will be born in the next 10 years, 100 years, to the end of the world, will have the same knowledge. So it will never change. This fact will never change, because obviously the vast majority of people do change.
But they change by Satan, by following falsehood. They change the nature of God.
Yes. But this verse says it will never change. So God's talking about the babies that will be born in the future. فطرة الله التي فطر الناس عليها لا تبديل لكلمات
When
الله.
they grow and they can change, they can choose both ways.
Oh, isn't it in every page of the Quran it says devote yourself to God alone? What's wrong with the people? Why do they have to stick Muhammad and Jesus with God? Why? And they turn downright hostile when we tell them what God is saying. Of course we know why, but it just never ceases to amaze us. Every page of the Quran says God alone. Devote yourself to God alone. God is the one who created you. God is the one who has the power. Nobody else has power. They're all dead. They're powerless. Every page.
They don't even read the Quran with me, and that is why they don't know what it is. Some of my friends I met recently that were in
Yeah.
and I said, why don't you read the Quran with meaning? No, we're not supposed to, because when it's translated, the meaning can be different. Well, it can be very different, but you cannot probably have the exact meaning in Arabic, but you can take up 2-3 different translations.
Exactly.
And see, and then coincidentally, the woman asked me about drinking. She had Yusuf Ali's translation from our house, and she wanted to find out where it was, and then I had picked up this one sound, and I showed her, and she read the words, and I read the words. And I said, see, the words are so different, and they've been printed years apart, but the meaning is the same.
Exactly.
So why don't you read? She said, oh, but we're not allowed to. You see, their heads or their imams
Satan,
or their
yeah, this is what Satan tells them. Yeah.
Don't read the meaning, you'll be understanding it wrongly, you see. So they are afraid to read them.
Yeah.
I said, you're really missing one, and you don't know what you're missing. That is why you're not praying at all. He doesn't pray, he drinks. I said, because you're just reading. You just try reading and you'll see what you find. It's such a pity. You're very educated people and they never read it with the meaning.
That's right.
They are afraid of the changing meaning.
Yeah, they've been told that if they read it,
if you don't understand what happened.
Oh, just an excuse.
So he said, if I read it, I just read it in Arabic.
Just an excuse. Again, the fellow that I argued with 2 or 3 hours here, at the end of which I discovered he never read the Quran. And he has a degree in management. So how many textbooks did he read to get a degree in management? He memorized and took tests. So it's just an excuse to say. When they say they don't read the Quran, because they don't care. Yeah. They don't believe.
Sure, I think maybe part of it is some of the mullahs keep their job for themselves.
Exactly.
They always try to make Quran like it's not accessible. It's very hard to understand.
Exactly.
You have to come to me so I tell you what it means. And
Exactly.
And really all of our lives because we never can understand Quran. And especially with the type of translation that we have. You read the part and don't understand almost any more than if you read the Arabic, even though Arabic is not our language.
Exactly. Is Nagma here? No. Good. Then I can say, see, the lawyers, for example, create a jargon. Life is very simple, and the issues before the courts are very simple. But the lawyers create such a jargon to monopolize the jobs. You know, this is really a very valid principle. And the same with the chemists. Dr. Sabahi here. The chemists create. I'm one of them. Who create a certain jargon to monopolize the. We make very simple things very complicated, because this is how we keep our jobs. The doctors do the same thing. In fact, they don't even write legibly, so you don't read the writing. This is why they keep a secret code between them and the pharmacist. Exactly.
The book of Hadith. I read some of it and I said, who can understand and remember this? It says 28 things about how to just make a glass of water. Honestly, 28. You know, it says if a slave gives you the glass of water, you have to hold it with 2 hands and you have to go in one or It's a lot of detail and so they make it like American tax. It's so complicated that at the end of the year you have no choice just to go to a tax man so you can do it. You know, it's not straightforward and easy to do it yourself. And I think if they say, okay, yeah, only the Quran and read Quran, then all these mullahs have to go and work. They can't make any more money.
This reminds me of a funny incident. So I told it to some of you. You bear with me.
Everybody's going to strike except the mullahs.
I took an American friend with me to Egypt who was a new Muslim. And we were in my hometown, and the representative in the parliament for my section happens to be a fanatic Sunni. And he met us, was very impressed by this new Muslim, and he invited him to a Coke. Okay, so he said, let's have a Coke. So he opened the bottle of Coke and he offered it to Dale. That was my friend's name. So Dale reaches for the bottle of Coke, and this member of parliament, he pulls it back. And then he offers it again. So Dale reaches for it and he pulls it back. So Dale whispers, what's going on here? What happened? He said, just what? So he reaches for the Coke bottle, and the member of parliament pulls the bottle away. And then he offers to him again. He said, see? I said, well, you're reaching with your left hand. It turns out this is true. So he reached with his right hand, and the member said, now you're talking, something. And he gave him the Coke. But there's so many funny things. It turns out to be a rule. They make up these difficult rules. If the guy has only left hand, yes. Oh my gosh, yes. This is the rules of going to the bathroom? Are you saying the rules of going to the bathroom? Yes, yes.
This is just one of them. You have to go with the left foot, for instance, and so on. When you sit, your weight, the weight of body has to be on the left foot. The wind should have takes you.
Barbara would like this statement. What if you had X-lax the night before? You forget all the rules. Yes, oh my gosh. We have
the story.
Lisa, how did you cut your nails today?
Now, first of all, we must start from our most
Listen to
honorable finger. Which finger that is the most honorable finger? And we think of this must be this finger because it shows God is one. And then first start with, but the second one is finger. And must be on right side, okay. And we go on the right side, finish here, and we come to, there is no finger on this side.
Don't be too sure.
Go through this from here or from here. Which side? It's close to this, but this right, this left, right. And how can we do? Then if you turn this way, and then you have to go in this way. But if you put in this way, you have to go in this way. Which way is the natural? This way or this way?
And this one is the first page.
And then, after a very long discussion, this is Imam Ghazali, one of the biggest ulama. And he has a lot of books. And then he decides on we have to put on our hands in this way and go on, finish this. And we have one red, this is the poorest finger, and then cut this.
The least honorable.
Yes, the most important.
Yes.
Nothing.
How else will Satan divert us from reading the Quran?
How many people actually believe in it?
More than you think. My father was one of them. I never understood why he was doing this system. Now I know.
They're building houses now. I heard in Pakistan where when they approve the plans, they, you know, the washroom should not be facing the Kaaba, otherwise they
Oh, yeah,
will remove the
absolutely.
plans.
This is what Abdul Hayy was talking about.
Don't say you are not supposed to say that moon and also the wind then comes towards you. So imagine, you know, there are times that you cannot find any direction.
Don't build in that place. Let's go to another verse. Boy, Satan is having fun with the disbelievers. Number 31 says, you shall submit to God, reverence Him, observe the contact prayers, and do not be among the idol worshippers. Do not be among those who divide their religion into sects, each party rejoicing with what they have. We had a fellow come from the Sunni mosque here, and he told Adib he's getting sick and tired of all the fighting that's going on there. I mean, here we're reading the Quran, we all agree on a certain principle in here. But over there they have different sects, and if you favor one sect and not the other one, they have fights. What did he tell you?
Oh, he said, I get bored that they hate each other there. There is no unity.
It's always like that. Because they do not follow this commandment. Do not be among those who divide their religion into sects, each party rejoicing with what they have. See, if you looked at us 15 years ago, this fellow will be my enemy, I'll be his enemy, because he'll be a Shia, I'll be a Sunni. And it will be, but look, now we're sitting one, united, loving each other.
Even among the Shias, I don't know if you know or not, but the Sunnis, like when they do the namaz, the person who leads the namaz doesn't mean that he is the most knowledgeable now. Everybody, but in Shia, you go to Imam Reza, for example, such and such mosque or whatever, and there are different groups, and they say, no, he is better, or so you see.
No, this is also true of the Sunnis. Yes.
So you see several groups, they are doing at the same
Yes.
time, but some people go behind this one, some people. So right there in one mosque there is division.
Yes, it has to be the oldest man and the most knowledgeable. And I remember we had a 90-year-old man, there was a mullah. I used to pray Fajr in the patron saint of my hometown, in the mosque. And quite often we'll go wake him up from sujood, because we'll make him sujood. he never gets up, you know. Let's go, hey, Maulana. And listen, wait a minute. When he died, I swear, when he died, President Sadat made a tomb for him. And people go now and worship at his tomb, this particular man. His name was Sheikh Hijab. Oh, I dreaded that every time I go and saw him, because it took 1 hour to pray Fajr. Half of him sujood. No, 3/4 sujood. Yeah, really? Yeah. He was very, very old. It has to be, there's a system in Sunnis. I guess Abdul Hayy thought that since we do it here this way, we all take turns, doesn't matter who's leading. That this is the Sunni system. It is not. The Sunni system and apparently also the Shia system, there is a priorities for leading the prayer.
One of them is the handicapped.
Should not be handicapped? I wish I knew that then. Capistrano Beach? Oh, bastard. Well, they have to ask you, are you a bastard? Yeah, I'm sure these are written in a book as to the priorities, the conditions of leading the prayer. What else? I know they has to be the oldest one and most knowledgeable and so on. There's a set of priorities. Huh? Yes. They do. Actually, they say, I am more worthy of leading a prayer than you. I have a PhD from the Azhar University, and the other say, I have the PhD plus this and that. And, I'm also 7 days older than you. Really? Yeah.
He was more capable. The Ahmadi Mullah, that's why he must
Yes.
have let me be.
Yes.
He is more
The Ahmadi Mullah in Canada said, I will humbly lead the prayer. Ismail Baqi said, you will humbly sit down right there. And he said it very angrily. He's supposed to be here, by the way. But then, Ismail Barakat. Saeed Talari will be here on Thursday, inshallah.